and Burgundy needs some rear wheel wells. The underside of the bed just gets entirely way too dirty. So we're going to add some wheel wells, try to contain that. All right, so what we're going to be using is Beyers, their Beyers brand rear wheel arch. It's a ABS plastic, and then it has one mount that is intended to be in the middle of the fender. We're going to mount ours towards the front, up front on the fender, and then we're going to make a bracket for the back of the fender to support it back there, plus add our mud flaps to the back. So this should really contain it. It takes quite a bit of eyeballing and everything to get these right. I just set them directly on the wheels and then kind of just visualized everything going straight up. And that's how I kind of laid them out. There is some adjustment in these brackets in a number of ways, the way that they give them to you. So you can kind of move the bracket around forward or backward, and then the fender you can roll on the slotted holes fore and aft as well. So you just got to be relatively close when you're setting everything up, and then everything should be within adjustment on it. I'm going to go ahead and cut my tubes off. It's not necessary. They would have worked without cutting them off, but just for a cleaner look, I'm going to go ahead and cut them off. I used a pipe cutter so that I could make a nice scribe around it, so that when I would finish the cut with, it's too thick to cut it with an exhaust cutter like that. But I had a nice guideline using that to start with, so that I could finish the cut with a little portaband. Then I just used a paper towel to block off the powder coated area, and then I painted the raw metal area with some Rust-Oleum Professional gloss black, and that actually matches pretty good. And then I pushed the cap back in. I nailed it as far as placement, but you can see how flimsy the rear of it is, putting the brackets up front there. That will be resolved here in a little while. We're going to fabricate our own brackets. They won't look exactly like these Beyers ones, but they'll look pretty nice. They're also going to mount our mud flaps, like I mentioned earlier. So those factory, the brackets that Beyers gives you, those mount via 1/5/8 bolt. That way you can rotate it around on the bolt for the adjustment. That's how you get some of the adjustment forward and back, basically aligning your center line. And then you can adjust, level out your wheel well on the slots on those brackets that go onto that pipe. You can adjust it from there. So those, they work out really well. It does make it really easy to install, because you're not looking for a big flat spot on the frame that you can go through. You might even get lucky and actually find a hole in your frame that you can mount that to, and then kind of use the adjustment to get it exactly where you want it. I was not that fortunate. I did end up using a factory hole on the frame, but the wrecker bed itself was solid in that spot. So I only had to drill through the record bed part, and I was then I went right into the hole in the frame on the factory frame of the Ram truck. So it worked out pretty good. So here we just made up I just drew out some brackets for the rear wheel arches, and now I'm just giving myself a little bill of materials there. I basically just need 2 of each one of those parts. It is very helpful to draw those so you don't make a mistake cutting them, even though it seems kind of pointless, like you shouldn't need to do that. But that way you get all your miters the right way and everything. And then if you make a mistake drawing it, it's easy to just draw a new one instead of cutting new parts. So I'm going to add some gussets. Probably not necessary at all, but it definitely won't hurt. The more rigid we can make them, the better. They are holding those big, heavy truck style mud flaps, so I did want them to be somewhat rigid, but it's probably a little bit overkill in reality. All right, so I put a bevel on all the sides of the tube. I like to tack them up on the pointed end first, the outside angle first, and then I'll tack everything up after I get it all fit right, and then I'll grind that off so that when I weld it, it actually can penetrate in there a little bit. So that's kind of my process of building square tube stuff like this. And then the gussets are again kind of an optional thing, but they'll work out pretty good. So I'm trying out my new. I got a new welding lens or a light blocking lens for the GoPro. So it's turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the quality of the footage, and I believe it would have been better had I had the camera a little bit closer to the welding itself. So I'm gonna keep playing with that, but hopefully my welding videography will get better and better as time goes on. Here I'm just adding some end caps to the ends. You could also, if you didn't have material laying around that you could do that with, it's pretty inexpensive. If you go on McMaster Car, you can buy some inserts that just pop in, basically like the buyer's ones on the round tube. You can buy those that'll just push in this 1-inch square tubing. wheel wells off, and while I'm at it, I'm going to take the covers off of the controls on both sides. Everything back there was put on with stainless steel hardware, and none of that stuff would come off. You'd either round the bolts off, even with 6-point sockets, or they would just break off if they didn't round off beforehand. They'd just twist off. I don't know what the deal was with those, but someone thought ahead and put stainless steel on there. Probably to prevent something like that from happening, but it happened anyway. So, but we got them all off of there. That one actually came off a little easier than the other one. I think it may have been off of there before, or who knows? I don't know. But a lot of rust and everything else. So we got it all off. So now we're just going to cut them. I'm going to cut these things so they actually fit the back of the wheel well. Obviously, I had to shorten them up a little bit, and then I narrowed them up, rounded the corners off. Just using that, I used one razor blade in the whole project, and it was one of the DeWalt carbide razor blades. Those things are amazing, especially for cutting rubber and matting and stuff like this. They work really well. So I just used 4-inch center on the bolts, drilled all the holes, remarked that out on the metal frame, and then did the same thing on there, and it all worked out. I drilled and tapped that 1/4 and I'm putting them on there with some flange head bolts and some fender washers. So I'm just using some tire cleaner to restore those things, tire protectant cleaner. I don't like using any of the shine stuff. It does make it shine, but not nearly as bad as some of that extreme shine and all that stuff. But they turned out really, really good. I'm extremely happy with how that turned out. Now, hopefully, I do have some adjustment, but hopefully we don't have any rubbing issues or anything like that when I'm fully loaded. I shouldn't, but you never know when it comes to that stuff, so I'm going to be listening carefully when I have a load on this thing to make sure that those don't ever touch, and then if they do, we'll have to make some adjustments.